In the dead center of the Byzantine Empire, where power was the only thing that mattered, one woman clawed her way from rock bottom to the absolute top. She was born into a world of total shame that saw her as disposable. But she would one day help write the laws, stare down insane riots, and literally hold the fate of an empire in her hands. This is the story of Theodora, the empress who was called a saint and a sinner, and whose insane ambition carved her name into history forever. To understand how hardcore Empress Theodora was, you have to see the world that created her. She wasn't born in a palace, she was born in a circus. Around 497 CE, in the massive city of Constantinople, Theodora started her life at the absolute bottom. Her dad, Acacius, was just a bearkeeper at the Hippodrome, the giant stadium that was the center of all entertainment and politics. But this life fell apart when Theodora was just a little kid. Her father died out of nowhere, leaving her and her family with nothing. In a desperate move, her mother sent her 3 little girls into the Hippodrome to beg one of the powerful circus factions to give her new husband her old husband's job. They were rejected in front of everyone. It was a brutal humiliation that probably taught Theodora her first huge lesson about power, what it feels like to have zero, and how far she'd go to get it. From that second on, her path was set. To survive, she and her sisters joined the only career available to them, the stage. In the Byzantine Empire, actress was just a nice way of saying prostitute. It was a life of being a public spectacle and a private disgrace, and Theodora didn't just survive in this world, she became a superstar. A historian named Procopius, who had a deep and vicious hatred for Theodora, wrote about her early career with pure disgust in his Secret History. He describes a performer of lewd, shocking comedies that were made to get the masses excited. According to his hateful account, her most famous act was a pornographic version of the Leda and the Swan myth, a performance that made her infamous across the entire city. This was a life lived on the edge, seen as a total disgrace by polite society. She was a courtesan for powerful men, and by her late teens, she'd already had a child. Procopius claimed that respectable men would literally cross the street just to avoid her, scared that even touching her clothes would ruin their reputation. To the rich and powerful, she was trash. But in the back alleys of Constantinople, Theodora was learning lessons the elites could never understand about people, about power, and about what it takes to win. After years of this life, Theodora's story takes a massive turn. She became the mistress of a governor and traveled with him to North Africa. But the relationship went bad, and he abandoned her in Alexandria, Egypt, leaving her stranded and broke thousands of miles from home. It was here, at her lowest point since she was a kid, that Theodora went through a huge change. Alexandria was a center of intense religious debate, and there she met leaders of the Monophysite faith. This version of Christianity was considered heresy by the main church in Constantinople. Theodora converted. This spiritual awakening completely changed her life. She quit her old job and supported herself as a humble wool spinner. When she finally got back to Constantinople, she was a completely different woman. She still had the same brilliant mind and charm, but now she had a new sense of piety and purpose. This strange combination would soon grab the attention of the most powerful man in the empire. Back in Constantinople, Theodora's beauty and insane intellect caught the eye of Justinian, the nephew and heir of the emperor. Justinian, a man almost 20 years older than her, was completely obsessed. He wasn't just attracted to her, he was blown away by her mind and her toughness. He made her his mistress, but he wanted to marry her. There was just one giant problem: the law. An old Roman law completely banned powerful men from marrying actresses. To the empire's elite, the idea of their future emperor marrying a former courtesan wasn't just scandalous, it was unthinkable. But Justinian refused to give up. He convinced his uncle, Emperor Justin, to do something insane. He had the law itself repealed in 525. Soon after, Justinian and Theodora were married. The woman from the circus, the scandal of the city, had just married the heir to the Byzantine throne. Her rise was just getting started. In 527, Emperor Justin died, and Justinian took the throne. At his side, Theodora was crowned Augusta, Empress. It was clear from day one she would not be a quiet, decorative wife. She was Justinian's full partner, his most trusted advisor, and a co-ruler in everything but name. Her brilliant mind and political skill led people to whisper that she was the real power behind the throne. Her influence was official and massive. Her name appeared right next to Justinian's on almost all laws passed while they reigned. She took on jobs normally only for the emperor, like meeting with foreign ambassadors and writing to other rulers. Justinian himself proudly called her his partner in my deliberations. She had her own court, her own staff, and her own network of spies. The former actress, who was once hated by the rich, now had power that both terrified and impressed them. Theodora's iron will was put to the ultimate test in January 532 during the Nika Revolt. The riots exploded in the Hippodrome, all because of high taxes. The city's two biggest political groups, the Blues and the Greens, actually united against the emperor, setting Constantinople on fire and naming a new emperor. The city was pure chaos. The mob ruled the streets, and the palace was basically under siege. Inside the palace, Justinian's advisors were panicking. They begged him to run, saying escape was the only option. A ship was literally waiting to take them to safety. Justinian was about to give up his throne. But Theodora refused. Standing in front of a room of terrified men, she gave a speech that would change history. She argued that this was no time for rules, not even the one saying a woman should be quiet in a man's council. It is impossible for a person having been born into this world not to die, she declared. But for one who has reigned, it is intolerable to be a fugitive. Then she delivered the legendary line that sealed their fate. As for me, I agree with the adage that the royal purple is the noblest shroud. Her insane courage completely galvanized Justinian. He stayed. He ordered his general Belisarius to lead the army into the Hippodrome and crush the rebellion. The result was a horrifying massacre, but the throne was saved. Theodora's ruthless decision had saved their reign and cemented her as the unshakable force of the empire. Once her power was secure, Theodora used it not just to crush her enemies, but to push for insane social change. Using the pain of her own past, she became one of history's biggest champions for the rights of women. The reforms she pushed were revolutionary for the 6th century. She went right after the sexual exploitation of women. She passed laws that banned forced prostitution and made it illegal for brothel keepers to stop women from leaving the business. And she didn't just pass laws, she enforced them, kicking brothel keepers out of the city and building a convent, a literal safe house, where former prostitutes could build new lives. Her reforms didn't stop there. Rape was made a crime punishable by death, a law that applied to men of every social class, and the criminal's property was given to the victim. She expanded women's rights in divorce and property ownership, making sure women could inherit money and be financially secure. She even changed adultery laws, which used to be much harder on women. Through the Justinian Code, Theodora's fierce support for the vulnerable became the law of the land, creating protections for women that were literally centuries ahead of their time. Theodora's influence also ran deep in the empire's religious life. As a devout monophysite, she used her insane power to protect her fellow believers from being persecuted. She often worked against her husband's official religious policy, even hiding persecuted monophysite clergy inside the imperial palace. This created a wild situation where the empress was actively shielding the very people the emperor was supposed to be punishing, proof of her unbreakable beliefs. Theodora died in 548, probably from cancer, leaving Justinian completely heartbroken. He never remarried, and for the rest of his life, he kept pushing the reforms she had fought for. Her legacy is full of insane contradictions. She was the scandalous performer who became a holy empress, the ruthless politician who crushed her enemies, and the compassionate reformer who protected the most vulnerable people in society. Worshipped by some, hated by others, she is still one of the most powerful and fascinating women in all of history. So what do you think of Theodora's incredible story? Was she a ruthless tyrant or a feminist icon who was way ahead of her time? I want to know, so spam the comments down below with your answer. And if you like this insane story, smash that like button and subscribe for more videos about the most incredible people in history. From the dirt floors of the circus to the marble halls of the Great Palace, Theodora's life is insane proof of the power of ambition. She was a woman who was handed nothing and decided to take everything. She outsmarted her enemies, shattered every social rule, and bent an entire empire to her will. Her story proves that power isn't just about the throne you sit on, but about the will to fight for it and the vision to use it. Theodora was never just an empress. She was the architect of her own destiny, a woman who proved that even when the world is designed to crush you, it's possible to rise, rule, and build a legacy that will never be forgotten.